So I think in order for you to become successful in properties, we have to have one objective. And the number one objective basically is for you to become a property investor instead of a property agent. So in your case, you're young, like you are in your teenage, if you are. What you want to do basically is to have that in mind, like focus on that. But if you want to have an exposure in the marketplace, you could consider that, but what I would advise you to consider more is getting the properties on a rent-to-rent basis. Why? Because it increases your rental income. It gives you the same burden if you're managing it, right? Because you have to manage the tenant and all that sort of thing. But it gets you better return on your investment if you were to get them on a rent-to-rent basis. I'll tell you why. Number one, you will be getting the tenant as the same way you'll be getting as a managing it. Secondly, you're renting the property then on a higher rate, and you could be making anywhere from £400 to about £700 per property deal. If you've got 5 properties, you do the math, right? You're talking about how much? £4,500, right? A month. And that's a financial freedom figure straight away. Okay? That's what I would advise you to do. However, if you couldn't get it and the landlord said, I don't want it to manage, I don't want to do the rent to rent, and you don't want to lose the deal, you can manage it in a way that you can prove the landlord that you are someone that could really, really look after their property and that could really, really get them on property to work a lot harder for them in terms of return on their investment, okay? So you could do it that way and you're making £300 every single month. But even a better way to do it, like I've got an investor who does this that I work with, all he does basically is to look for tenants for the landlord, right? You don't manage it, okay? You go out there, look for the tenant, and then once you've got the tenant, you charge the tenant a little bit, right? Because you're not an agent, right? And charge the landlord a little bit for helping them finding the tenant. So in that case, you'll be making a minimum of £100 to £200 per tenant. And this depends on the location. If it's in London or places like that, you're talking about £300 or £400 per tenant. So it's lucrative. In that case, if you're making about £300, let's say worst case scenario, about say £300 per tenant, and you've got 5 tenants, you're talking about £1,500, right? Imagine now repeating that, finding tenant for landlords. So what then subsequently happen at that point is they will recommend you to other landlords to find them tenant, okay? And that way you don't own the properties and you're not managing them, you don't have tenant problems, you're still making kind of the same amount of money. Makes sense? And you're also learning about the property market as well. You may be asking, how do you do this? How do I get to do this? It's very, very, very straightforward if you got the right guidance. Like we're working together, I'll help you sort that out. Is I can show you how you can go on Spare Room, right? Where you can get the tenant details and then contact the tenant, tell them you've got a property to rent. Right? You can go to the tenant and say, I've got a property to rent. They tell them where the property is at. Tell them, listen, I'm not the owner of the property, I'm not the management agent, but I source properties. If I help you sell this property, if I help you rent the property, would you be able to give me about maybe £50 to £100 for it? Right? Especially now when properties are so scarce, you will make a killer, bro. And that investor, that's all he does, right? Because he doesn't want to deal with tenants' problems and all that sort of thing. That could be another income stream. Alternatively, you could, because you're young, if you're not probably at the age to sign contract, you could actually work with an investor that you can partner in and you do all the legworks and then obviously share the profit that way. But what I would advise you to do is to have the vision to become a property investor instead of a property agent, because that's what gives you more money, more success. That's where you add more value as well, and that's where you can compensate it handsomely. So that's what I advise you to do. Have that in mind, and then you can then obviously source the tenant for the investors or landlords and then make your money that way. I really hope that advice has been helpful.